Welcome, everybody. Get ready. It's real. It's Tony. I have my first guest today. I've been waiting for this young lady to come in. Her name is Aneta. I'm going to have her introduce herself and talk about who she is, why she's here, and what her mission in life is. How you doing, Aneta?
I'm good, Tony. Thank you for having me on your show.
So tell us a little about yourself.
I'm a mom in Glendale. My full name, Aneta Kirpakian. I ran for Glendale School Board in the last election that ended on March 5th. Unfortunately, didn't get to secure the seat, but it was a major learning experience. As an individual who's never been in politics, who's never stepped foot into the realm of that world, it was a very eye-opening experience that just a regular person, regular mom who's been involved inside schools on a local level, runs for board, and I was able to experience things that I never imagined. The world of politics was, you hear things from the outside. You don't imagine what it is once, when you're on the outside, you don't imagine what it is. But once you go into that world, when you step into that position where you are a political candidate, it's like entering a whole different universe. It really is. I got involved in politics not because I wanted to, but I felt like it was some duty that I had taken upon myself. Been involved with the Parental Rights movement here in Glendale for a couple of years now. I became a Glendale Unified School District parent in 2020. And I was thrown right into the middle of all the chaos in our first experience as members of Glendale Unified was right when the pandemic happened.
Right.
And my child was stuck behind Zoom. So from the beginning, I was exposed to all the corruption, all the politics being played, all the ways our children were victimized. It's like this massive machine that was just working against us, and it was appalling. It was so discouraging. And there were days like, as parents, we just felt exhausted, but, it was a hard reality to ignore. It's, when they say ignorance is bliss.
Right.
I just could not put myself in that position. So from the beginning, I was, I guess, one of the most outspoken parents at my daughter's school, and it's one of the largest elementary schools in Glendale, where, if I didn't like the answer to something, I had to know what was behind it. I didn't like the surface level explanation of why things were being the way they were being done during COVID time. So, my involvement just increased and increased as I realized that the deeper I dig, the more corruption and more things that I was finding out that were not to my liking.
Right.
And I think the easier way would have been just to take my kid out and just either homeschool or take her to private, put ourselves in that financial burden of having to do private. But I don't know. I guess the fighting spirit in me just didn't accept to have that happen to parents and our children. Right. And I felt like, we were just being pushed out and, you don't like it, leave kind of mentality.
Right.
And I didn't accept that because it was like conservative parents especially were being bullied out of the district. And I saw so many family members and friends, my children's, they went to school with them from preschool. And then all of a sudden I see these families leaving, and it was breaking my heart. I was like, when do we put a stop to it?
Right.
When do we stand up and demand that our parental rights be respected, that the district stop playing games and start taking our concerns seriously? And so just my involvement just kept getting more and more deeper involved as I was going, because there were too many issues. I couldn't ignore it.
Right. And that's the beauty of it, is that you didn't walk away. Right. I think sometimes people are afraid to push back to the system because they're afraid of the system. And you kept going and going and going. And that's what we need. Right. We need warriors on the front lines. Mm-hmm. I'm an Army veteran, so all my analogies come to do with military, but we need people in the front line to fight for our kids, for our rights, for the future, right? Because these kids are going to be our future leaders. And if we don't have parents super engaged And I don't mean engage, from 7 to 8 at night. Super engage with their children. The government will continue to do what they do, and we cannot allow that. When you talk about parental rights, what woke you up? You said during the Zoom calls, right? The kids were all going to Zoom. What woke you up? Were you monitoring the Zoom calls with the school teacher, or?
So we were fortunate to have a really good teacher while my daughter was on Zoom. So what woke me up was you had teachers like her who were vocal about wanting to go back. And then you had the union pushing back, saying, no, we're not going to go back. We're going to continue staying closed, and kind of, putting that pressure on their own teachers that don't go up against your union because we want to keep schools continuously closed. The fact that kids fell academically behind, I blame it on the unions, the politicians, and the district board members who allowed, especially in California, and Glendale was following Los Angeles, they were using their model. The fact that, they weren't more aware of what's happening to our kids, or no, actually were aware, they just didn't care. Right. I hold them accountable for the fact that how our kids fell academically behind. And now it's created this issue where kids aren't academically challenged like they used to be. And the good teachers are overwhelmed because they really do want to educate their kids. Mm-hmm. So I was one of the lucky parents who did have a good teacher. And for my daughter, I know a lot of parents, it was a very big eye-opener. Some of them got to witness certain conversations that are just appalling behavior by some of the teachers. And I don't even call them teachers, I call them activists. Mm-hmm. Because anybody who uses their position of power against children to push propaganda and politics and victimize innocent kids, to me, you're not an educator, you're not a teacher, you're not a good role model in that child's life. You're basically the oppressor. Right. You're the one who's victimizing the children that you are assigned to educate and using them for your own political benefits, your own political propaganda and push. So one of the things that bothered me in regards to the district was it made no sense, them continuing to keep the schools closed. I've said this multiple times. When I was driving around and seeing all these businesses that had reopened and everybody was going back to work in person, yet our kids were continuously still sitting behind a computer screen, it was very, very frustrating and irritating to see. And whenever you would talk about it as parents, I basically started participating in board meetings before we even had a chance to go in person. So I would wait in line in the queue to call in through Zoom and talk, because that's how important it was for me. And, I would express myself saying that there are people that were never even home. The Starbucks baristas never stayed home. They worked every single day during the pandemic. Yet we have everybody now at that point returned back to school, and we had kids losing so much, valuable time to gain an education, gain social skills, have that interaction that they desperately need with their teachers, with their classmates. They were continuously robbing them of having a normal childhood. Right. And as a mom, witnessing that, it hurts your heart, because you don't want to. Every parent and every grandparent who helped their kids behind Zoom are the ones who truly witnessed what those children went through. Right. And pretending that, we're all in this together. No, you're not all in this together. Everybody is individually isolated in their own home. God knows what they're going through and what they're experiencing. And some kids were in good, stable homes. Some kids were not in so good and stable homes, and they relied on campuses. I know there were some families that also relied on the nutrition that public schools provide, and they were deprived of that. And they had, but we're passing out free food. Yes, but on a specific hour. Right. When some people are working at home, they cannot drive to that specific location within that one window and pick up food that it was very generous that they were able to pass out, but it was also unrealistic to expect that every student was going to be able to go and access that, resource. So every little step they were taking was just going against the betterment of our children's future. And they just were continuously ignoring us. They didn't care. And until they didn't get the green light from their politicians and their unions, and when they opened schools finally, it was like a major joke. They had like these ridiculous hybrid schedules. Right. They had these ridiculous COVID measures that made no sense. And it wasn't solid across the board. Every single school was just winging it. They didn't know what they were doing. So everybody was just doing whatever they wanted to do. Some schools more strict, some schools more lenient. Very frustrating as parents, because if you have two kids, one is in elementary and one is in middle school, you're like, wait a minute, but my elementary school lets my kid go to school on this day. It's just a bizarre mess, a complete nightmare that I feel like as parents we haven't digested and the kids haven't digested. And the teachers are feeling the effect of that, because a lot of kids have lacked social skills. A lot of them have fell academically behind, as I mentioned, and now it's up to the teachers to help these kids catch up. I personally didn't wait for my child to fall behind. I took the I was proactive and I hired a tutor to make sure my child doesn't fall behind, because I was seeing that this Zoom is lasting a little longer than I would like it to. And then, as we formed our parental groups and created our own community, I would say created our own parents' union, because we had no representation, not on the board, not in any of the classrooms. Like, we just had to represent ourselves. We were finding out things that some parents were experiencing through Zoom, whether it was the gender ideology topics that were being pushed, whether it was teachers who weren't teaching at all. They were just putting movies for their kids the students to watch and calling that an education. So this very large, overwhelming group of parents formed and I'm glad they formed to finally hold a district responsible for their actions.
No, and you're absolutely right about that. And I'll give you another example of teachers just teaching movies, right?
Yeah.
So at my granddaughter's school, they had her watching CNN during the Ukraine war, right?
Wow.
Right. So if you're watching CNN News, they're going to say this is World War III about to happen. She called me that same night crying, Opa, is there going to be a World War III? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, we were watching CNN today. Where were you watching CNN?
At school?
At school.
Oh, my God.
So then I called the school, and they were trying to teach, I don't know what they were trying to teach, but they were trying to teach them current events. I'm like, well, that's fine teaching current events, but you don't put on CNN or Fox News. You have the teacher talk about current events. I said, because if you have an 11-year-old child watching CNN, watching rockets being fired and shot and buildings being blown up, and World War III is being talked about, what are they going to think?
Right.
Right. So we need to make sure that we don't waste our kids' time. And we owe it to our children. We owe it to the parents to, if you want to be an educator, you educate our kids. You don't indoctrinate our kids. You don't teach them nonsense. You don't show them some of those books that they show these kids. In the third grade, they're showing kids books that are inappropriate, things that I wouldn't do. Right. Or like the city of Burbank had the LGBTQ event where they had cross-dressing men dancing on laps of children. Right?
Wow.
Now, I blame the parents for that also, but also the city of Burbank for allowing to do that, for sponsoring that kind of event, right?
Right.
And maybe some of these parents felt obligated, because if they didn't participate, they would be called bigots or racist or whatever we got called.
The same buzzwords that they recycle over and over.
I'm sure you got called some of those words in Glendale.
On a daily.
I get called in Glendale and Burbank, any city that I speak about, or even LAUSD when I spoke about that, you're a bigot, you hate people that are LGBTQ. No, that's not true. What I care about is that when the child goes to school, they get taught math, English, and science.
Right.
We don't want to become the state of Oregon. I don't know if you heard, but the state of Oregon.
I've heard.
Right? you don't have to pass math, English, or science or anything to graduate, right? Or state of Washington, if you
Why
want to
go
be
to school at all?
Exactly. Well, we keep using buzzwords, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion, so that people just like, oh, okay, I see what they're trying to do. But that's not what they're trying to do. What they're trying to do, in my opinion, is break up the family unit, right? Because kids are very easily influenced at a young age.
Yeah.
Teachers are supposed to be their mentors. So if a teacher covers up whatever they cover up in school, the child is going to be a child, right? They're going to take the easy route. Well, my teacher said it's okay, so my parents are mean because they don't agree with me, but my teacher does, so I'm going to do whatever he or she says.
Right.
And that's not fair to the family unit, right? Because once you break that up in the United States, it's really, in my opinion, it's over, right? Once you mess with the family, that's it, right?
It should be a crime to come between a parent and child's bond.
Absolutely.
To try to place yourself in the middle between a parent and the way that they teach and the way they run their households, to place yourself in the middle between a parent and a child should be a crime. And try to gain in vindictive ways the child's favor, the child's, trust.
Right.
And when the child starts trusting the educator or a school employee more than their own parent, it's major red flags. And a lot of teachers, I feel like, or staff members haven't been held accountable in the proper ways that it should be an example. You don't come between a parent and their children.
Right.
You really don't. You're messing with, like you said, a type of union and unity between this family. How do you sleep at night is my question.
I'm clueless because the leadership in our state, anyway, I'll speak for California, from the top down,
Yes.
believe this nonsense. And they've turned everything into, this group versus that group, when really all we really want as parents and grandparents is that we have the right to do whatever we need to do with our children as long as we don't hurt them, right?
Right.
And kids are confused at a young age, right? I mean, we all go through this, I'm this way, I'm that way, I don't feel comfortable with my body, I'm overweight, or my hair is not right.
Many
right?
different things.
Like, kids go through all this. We all go through this, right?
Right.
I wasn't interested in women until high school. Did that make me weird? Maybe, but it wasn't my thing. I like
Right.
playing baseball. That was my big thing, right? Kids can't say that nowadays, because if you decide that you want to play baseball instead of chase girls in high school, you're
There might
weird,
be
right?
something wrong
right.
with you.
And,
Yeah.
and they have all these kids believing that nonsense, and we need
Right.
to stop that. And I'm a firm believer that government begins at home. Right? Mom and dad
Yes.
are the leaders,
Right.
and mom and dad should run their family. They run their finances. They run, if they own a business, their business. How to treat the kids, how to dress their children. That's a parental thing. It's not a government thing.
Absolutely. You don't bring children into this world to co-parent with the government.
No.
That's the last thing that you think about. You think of how you're going to raise your own kid, how you're going to bring them up to be, normal individuals who have kind hearts, or, are aware of their surroundings, and just implement your own values, whether you're religious, whether you're not. And it goes back to, like you said, parental rights, where the parent, they want to talk about religion at home, they talk about it.
Right.
They don't want to talk about religion. They don't want to talk about politics. They don't talk about it. Whatever it is. So if what is being discussed at school interferes with the parents' teachings and the way that family dynamic is, it should not be allowed. And I'm just shocked that we're even at that point where we have to remind the administration, hey, you're basically interfering with my parental rights, my constitutional rights of what I get to teach my children, how I get to raise them. What I teach at home is right or wrong.
Right.
At school, you're teaching them the opposite. There are a lot of things that are legal or accepted, or, for example, smoking weed is acceptable and it's legal. I don't teach my kids that that's something
Absolutely.
right to do. A very bizarre example I bring up sometimes is stripping is legal. Should we start talking about that occupation at school? Like, it just makes no sense, where certain things you have to leave up to the parents to explain to the kids. And yes, kids will hear a lot of things on the playground if they ask the teacher, and the teacher should automatically say, go ask your parents. Let your parents explain what that word means or what that topic means, because that's what my child's teacher did. There was some kids were talking about different topics and stuff, whether it was a cuss word, whatever it was. She said, we don't say that. We don't use that cuss word inside school. It's a bad word. Oh, what does it mean? Go ask your parent. I'm not going to sit here and explain to you what that word means, because all I can tell you is we're not allowed to use that word at school. And I respected that. I said, thank you, because, I don't know, like some of these activist teachers, it just boggles my mind how they'll go out of their way to kind of bring up a topic knowing kids are going to ask questions, because they're kids, they're interested, especially if it's something taboo or foreign or something that's a little like, oh my God, we don't talk about that at home. They're going to ask all the questions that they would probably feel embarrassed or shy to ask their parent, because I don't know about you, but I grew up in a household where you were, you had a certain kind of respect towards your parent, where not every topic was easily discussed, right?
No, absolutely not.
Exactly. So I think that creating that environment where kids can freely talk about certain topics, knowing that at home it's not a topic that's going to be easily discussed and approved of, you're interfering with that family's, dynamics, the way that they were raising their kids. It's become such a mess. A mess.
It is a mess. Glendale used to be on the top of the schools in California at some point, right?
Yes.
And I think it dropped to 40 something now.
I'm not sure exactly where we are. I know that California as a whole has dropped.
Oh yeah, we're like 49 out of 50.
Yes, we're very low. But Glendale, it's very confusing because they keep changing their own, I guess, rules and the way that they grade. So it's like they're constantly, patting themselves on the back for a job well done. Meanwhile, you look at the state test scores and you're like, should we really be patting ourselves on the back? Oh, well, the tests are this, the tests are that. Then why are they taking the test? Why is the state requiring?
Well, again, it goes back to diversity, equity, and inclusion, right?
Exactly.
They use those words every time they want to. I think LAUSD is trying to pass where to get a passing grade, a D is 30-something%. And then we're going to put these kids out into the world to run a business, work. They're not even going to know the basics of math, right? To do a good job at anything in life. So we're doing them a disservice.
We are.
Right? And I think that government officials, especially government officials, they don't really care, right? They just want to get voted in again by having these groups around them that, hey, look, we're doing this just for you, right? And it should be for everybody, not just for you.
Yeah.
There's an organization called Democratic Socialists of America. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
No,
right?
I haven't.
They're a far left progressive, crazy group. Any candidate they endorse, right, has to sign a statement to co-govern with them.
Wow.
And there's candidates in Burbank that have done that. There's a LA City Council lady that did that, right? Just to get money from them. And if you go to their website, you realize how crazy and whacked out they are. Right?
So they're basically their puppet. Yeah. They're controlled by that organization versus, especially school board, it's supposed to be, and city council is supposed to be nonpartisan.
Right.
You're sitting there to serve the whole city, all the communities, regardless of their background. And if you're going to already go into this with the notion that you're going to be serving one political group specifically, and not even the weak-lined or the, middle Democrats, the very progressive, strong, with the way you explained how thin they are. How are you taking an oath and serving office if you're going in there knowing you're not going to be running a biased and you've already made up your mind on certain topics before it's even discussed.
And this is why we need, and I hate to use this word, but normal people to run for office.
Yeah.
Mom and dads, grandparents, uncles, aunts. We don't need career politicians. We don't need people that have already been pre-selected by certain officials in office now to make decisions for us, because they don't care, because to them it's all about the mighty dollar.
Right.
It's not about you and I or your kids or my grandkids. It's about them, right? What they can do, whatever organization they can penetrate to get their way. Right? And you said it, unions, right? Mm-hmm. I know my opponent is raised $1.5 million off unions.
Wow.
Right? Off unions alone.
Amazing.
Right? Who is he going to be beholden to? Me, the taxpayer, or the unions?
Right.
He's going to do whatever the unions tell him to do, right? Whether it comes to government contracts or anything like that. But back to the schools. You briefly mentioned about some of the stuff that they show kids in school. Do you have something you want to show us on some of the books that?
Yeah. So I became very interested because a parent, when they came forward and they said that they heard certain things and they saw the teachers showing the students, because it was the month of June, she took it upon herself without asking permission from anyone. The teacher took it upon herself to start showing 8-year-old kids LGBTQ Pride Month YouTube videos, just, things that she wanted to share. And, they did discuss sexuality and nudity in those videos. And the parent, when they talked about that, it was just, what do you mean? And when I found out about that, I wanted to request my own public records and find out how much is being implemented and pushed, because, some of these things are starting to, they're not conspiracy theories anymore. When you're having hard evidence and facts, when someone's actually witnessing it happening, even the people that were questioning it, like, you guys, maybe, you sound a little crazy or whatever. Right. They were like, wait a minute, I'm noticing certain things as well. So I requested my own public records. And in the public records, I found out that there is a nonprofit organization that donates gender ideology books to public schools. And they approached all the public schools in Los Angeles, and some of the public schools, rightfully so, said thank you, but no thank you. We don't want your donation. But our school in particular, an individual, Kelly King, she's the assistant superintendent of GUSD. She took it upon herself, bypassed the protocol of how books get placed into schools.
Right.
She just on her own accepted the largest donation on gender ideology books, and every single elementary school in Glendale received 12 gender ideology books donated to them. Principals weren't aware of it. They just one day get a box full of all these books saying donation from Kelly King, say thank you, and put it in your library.
Right.
I'm happy to know that some principals said they looked inside, they saw the type of books that they made a judgment call, and they said, no, not in my school, not where I'm running the show. And some of them actually just displayed it proudly and, front and center. And this donation was in 2019. Right after that was the pandemic. So we hadn't seen it on the shelves as parents. 2020, the kids were home. 2021, when they go back, there was a rule where kids cannot bring library books that they're reading at school home because of COVID. And it was one of the ridiculous COVID restrictions that they have, because quote unquote germs get spread if you take the book home. Meanwhile, the bathrooms are so filthy.
Right.
But
or the water fountains.
The water fountains. I was like, okay. So then whenever I looked in the public records and I looked on the school library directory, and I noticed these gender ideology books, I kept asking, how did these books get in there? And over again, I got rejected. I got denied for a year and a half, waiting for those records to come to me, because I wanted to know who donated these books, who thought of this brilliant idea that it was a good idea to put these books into our kids' elementary school. Mind you, elementary is TK through 5th grade.
Right.
So 4 years old to 10 years old. And you're putting these books in there, and they just kept not giving me the answer. They kept breaking the law and rejecting my public records until I had to hire an attorney, pay out of pocket. And I was finally given the evidence that it was Kelly King who bypassed this entire protocol. And some of the books that she donated, I think actually every school, elementary school, got this one in particular. Right. It's called Who Are You? The Kid's Guide to Gender Ideology. And inside the book, there was a wheel that comes with it. I don't have it. I don't know. I probably, let me see. Oh, it's right over here. It comes with this playful wheel that kids can, let me see if I can get it out. Oh, I know, isn't it bizarre? They have this wheel where the kids can like turn it and decide at that day, I have a gender. I have a neutral body, a body that made adults guess girls, a body that made adults guess boy, a gender, and then what do you like? Hair clips, leggings. This weird thing where kids just can like, roll this around and just be like, maybe I am a boy, but I like girl stuff. Maybe I'm both, because there's the option that you could be both. And in the book, it goes more into detail, that it talks about how when you are born as a baby, your parents look at your body and if they ask, is it a boy or a girl? Babies can't talk, so grown-ups make a guess by looking at their bodies. This is the sex assigned to you at birth, male or female. Sometimes people get this confused with gender. And it just goes on in there explaining to kids that, maybe you're a boy, maybe you're not a boy, maybe you're a girl, maybe you're not, maybe you're both, maybe you just haven't decided yet. And this concept is being introduced as early as 4 years old. A topic that is very heavy and very difficult for children to comprehend. So if a child reads this, they're clearly going to have a lot of questions.
Right.
And another book that was donated is I Am Jazz. It was donated to all the elementary schools again. Jazz is actually a biological boy, but he just likes girl stuff. So he keeps telling his parents that he feels like he's a girl. So they take Jazz, I want to find that page where they take Jazz to a special doctor. And the doctor introduces the parents to the word transgender. And so we see this boy, Jazz, who eventually turns into a girl. And this concept is introduced again to kids as little as 4 years old. But one of the interesting things that I found was, I don't know why, a lot of these books target boys, little boys. So you have I Am Jazz. There was another book that was donated called George, again about a boy, transgender, turning into a girl, Melissa.
Right.
Which that book is a chapter book, and the context in there is not even age appropriate, or a child of that age cannot even grasp it. Why they've donated that book to elementary schools, I have no idea. It's funny, this book, that when I first brought it to the attention of the principal, there's words in there that she hadn't even heard of. And she asked me, she's like, what does that mean? I'm like, oh, but you want children to read this and become familiar with it? Just very thing.
It's amazing. Again, right? They're trying to really control kids is what they're trying to do, right?
Right.
Trying to break them away from their families, because kids are going to be kids, right? I remember the things I did when I was a kid. My parents say, don't do this. I would do it.
Yeah.
Right?
It's natural.
Right? It's a natural reaction.
Right.
And to teach them things like this, to give them medication to,
Yes.
make them something that they're not. They're not sure what they are. I mean, my wife was a tomboy when she was a kid. She was a tomboy, but,
these days she would have been treated differently.
Right. These days she would be like, oh, you must be a boy.
Right.
Or you need to, wear things to suppress your breast because, want to keep you looking like a boy.
Right.
Until you're old enough to get medication. As we know in California, I think it's 14 or 15. A kid can say, I want to have a sex change, right? And then they might end up regretting it because, as you know, there's a lot of stories, a lot of fact about what happens to these surgeries, a lot of infections, a lot of medical issues, right? And we're going to condone that behavior because California wants to be that free state, right? Governor Newsom wants to be the hero of, by allowing doctors from Arizona to come here to do abortions, for example, right? I mean, at some point, people need to wake up and fight for their kids. Right. If you're too lazy to fight for yourself, then that's on you. But your kids, if you decided to have children, and this is Tony speaking now, if you decided to have children, I don't care if you sleep 1 hour a night. I don't care if you have 2 jobs. You decided to have kids. So you need to make sure that you're there for your kids so they don't go elsewhere. Because any kid, hey, I don't get attention from mom and dad, but Mr. Smith at school is giving me attention. Right. And he's hugging me and he's telling me how beautiful I am or other crazy things that some of these teachers say to kids, right? To befriend them, right? Yeah. And again, you befriend a kid, we lost them, right? We lost them to the system. And that's not fair. It's not fair. When you're talking about books, there was a book, and I forget the entire title, but it had 2 squirrels on the front. It was something These Nuts. Right. Oh my God. Right. I read that at LAUSD, and they stopped me from reading the book. Really? Oh, it's because they didn't want to hear it. And I told them, I said, wait a minute, you're allowing a 8-9-year-old person to read this book. Why can't I read it to you? Well, it's offensive. And I'm like, well, it's not offensive in the classroom.
It's unbelievable because, again, it could be topics that obviously at one point in their life they're going to learn, but why are they pushing it at such a young age? And as you said, those buzzwords that they like to use against us, me bringing this to the attention of the parents and disputing it with the district, saying that not only did you guys bypass the entire process of getting these in, they're not even age appropriate books or concepts that are normal or accepted by some families, where you guys are putting us in this position where we have no choice but to fight against this indoctrination, so to speak, because if it was allowed and if it was something that is acceptable, why did you guys have to go through the process of slipping it in under the rug and putting it into schools by bypassing the product? And then why did you hold that information from parents, specifically me, for over a year, and hid the fact that these books were donated? They are not a state requirement. Do I think that they should be in elementary schools? No, they shouldn't be in elementary schools. And kids do learn these topics, but again, it has to be discussed at home. Give the parents a chance to explain to the kids. Right. The problem is they don't like the explanation we give at home. No. They don't want it to leave it up to us. And then when they say, well, what rights of parents has been violated? The right where I get to explain to my kid certain topics. You don't have to like my explanation. Everybody runs their household a different way. And like you mentioned, as parents, we are obligated to pay attention to what is happening in our children's lives and at their schools. And I brought it up and I said, why so young? Why such a young group of kids? And why gender ideology books? Why focus on that? And in particular, why are boy kids, the male children, a bigger target? And that's something I don't have the answer to. I don't know. Are they easier to manipulate and control?
Well, we can speculate, right? Yeah. I mean, control the population, right? Right. You make the boy think he's a girl. You have relationships that break up because of that, because one person in that relationship wants, and I know one guy specifically that I know well, that him and his wife split up, and his wife took his child when he was born, a boy, and turned him into a little girl. And he's in a court, and of course it's California. Right. So he's he's in a court battle with his wife over his kid, and he's losing because how does a 2-year-old know what they want, right? Right. And the nonsense that your parents decide your sex. No, the sex is decided by God. Yeah. Whatever God you believe in, whatever faith you have, the parent didn't decide, oh, okay, you're going to grow a penis and you're going to have a little vagina. No, that's something that happens, right? It's a natural thing. So for them to start dictating to parents what their child should be, or calling you birthing person, or some nonsense that you know.
And if you object, you're all those names that they call. You're a homophobe, you're a transphobe, you're a racist. I don't know how racism got into all this, but they like to throw that one out as well.
You know, because if they use those keywords again, people will listen, right? You have certain groups that'll listen, right? What I'm hoping for is at least people in California are getting like people in Virginia did a couple years ago. The reason Virginia they had a new governor, a Republican governor at that, was because of the parents. Right? Mm-hmm. The FBI was investigating parents. They were calling them terrorists because they were fighting the school system. And we need to do that here in California. We need parents to stand up and fight the school system and not allow things to happen. And I'll go back, and I'm going to age myself, but when I was going to school in California, right, you had to have a parental slip sign for anything that they were going to do outside the curriculum.
Right.
So sex education at 13, I had to bring a slip back to school. What happened to all that, right? What happened with asking parents, can we talk to your child about this? And let the parents decide. Or we're going on a school trip. You got to have a signed slip, right? If your kid's absent, they call you, right?
Of course.
Right? They're going to call you. Why is your kid absent? And if your kid doesn't go to school, or your child doesn't go to school for 2 or 3 days, there's always that CPS threat, right? Child Protective Services. You're holding your child back from getting his education or her education. So parents need to stand up, right? Yeah. And parents need to get involved. We need to stop worrying about, you know, people at the federal level. We need to worry about our community, our cities, right? That's where we need to focus our efforts, because we have to stop this now.
The local races are very important, and I think I will speak from experience where I think a lot of people are either discouraged, tired, they've given up. They say, what's the point? It's all controlled. It's all decided, or whatever it is that they believe. And I saw certain groups that had lack of involvement because they just were like, what's the point? That's what they want. They want they want someone like me to run for school board, not win the election, and just disappear, right? They don't want me to constantly be there fighting for my rights and bringing awareness to issues that affect all of us. They want people like me to just disappear and go away. Oh, she lost the election. Hopefully she'll just disappear and we won't have to. No, I have 2 kids in the school district. I'm not going to be pushed out that easily. I'm not going to have my kids be disrespected and my family disrespected. Regardless of elections, I'm still a parent at this district. I am obligated to stay involved and be aware of what my children's school is doing and not doing. And it's just, you know, and I want to tell people that the lack of involvement from certain parents is very hurtful to see, because I was asking parents to be involved before I was a political candidate. I was asking parents to be involved while I was a political candidate. And now, as a no longer political candidate, I'm still asking parents to stay involved and be involved in their schools. Maybe it's the dreamer in me that thinks that public schools still have a chance to be saved. People are like, it's done. Public schools are done. Take your kids out. Do this, do that. I don't know. I guess I'm just so sad to see what's happened, specifically in Glendale, where it had a very good reputation of public schools. We've seen a lot of successful people come out of the Glendale school district. They've become wonderful entrepreneurs and wonderful people contributing to our community and our society. They got that education and that, you know, stable background from GUSD. And we're just going to sit back and watch that all crumble and fall into pieces. I don't want to see that happen. If a district, when the foundation was strong and good, I believe we can bring that back, bring the focus back to education, higher academics, and take all this nonsense and corruption out. Politics do not belong in the classroom. I think activist teachers need to be held more responsible for their actions. I do want parents to be more involved. so the good teachers can get that support versus feel like they are outnumbered and pressured by their own unions.
Right.
So we need to go back to the basics. We've completely lost our way, and the not involved parents and the silent parents have helped contribute to the downfall. Right. Because, it's easy to blame the so-called enemy or easy to blame the person you don't agree with. There are a lot of people in my own party and my own group that I've said, well, what did you expect? How much longer did you think that this was going to survive? If you guys are placing that responsibility on the shoulders of just a small group of individuals, do you think we're going to be able to uplift this heavy burden and be able to make the positive changes that we need without more support? We need more boots on the ground. Yep. We need more people to realize where we've landed, whether it's as a state or as a city, and get involved. It's so easy to complain online behind keyboards.
Exactly.
Everybody's a keyboard warrior.
Yeah, they are.
But when the time comes when they're actually supposed to do something, and me personally, I saw what a strong and corrupt and powerful machine the teachers union was, and they make it seem like they speak for all of their teachers. They do not.
Right.
I can sit here and talk for hours about all the ways they have helped elect board members that have made the lives of teachers worse.
Right.
And cut their resources, not paying them their adequate raises while administration is getting their raises.
Absolutely.
The administration's pockets are being fattened, and you're seeing a surplus of administrations and all these people that so-called work for the district, while teachers are the ones inside the classroom. Teachers are the ones responsible for educating our kids, and their unions spend hundreds and thousands of dollars to elect these very board members that are still not giving them the raises that their union promised that they would get if they helped get these individuals elected. Mm-hmm. It's like the circle they keep going round and round in every election cycle. And to the teachers, I say, when are you guys going to wake up? Because a lot of parents are awake. Or when are you going to stand up and realize that if you leave your union, you're not going to get fired? Because I know some teachers who've left their union. Right. They're still working. They still have job protection. They still have their benefits.
Absolutely.
They still get their raise if the district will finally give them a raise. And people think that when I was running, they said I'm a one topic kind of candidate. Like all I care about is these gender issues. No, that's just one part. Right. The corruption is so many levels. There are so many peels to this onion. Right. And budget was one of the big things that I was concentrating on, because I was seeing how much money is being wasted on companies and surveys and all these resources that they've purchased, whether it's for mental health. When we have free resources coming in from the government, they're hiring all these extra therapists and paying them six-figure salaries, and these therapists are barely seeing 2 to 3 patients a school year. Meanwhile, the teacher is inside the classroom every single day, 6 to 8 hours, depending on the class. And, because some of them have been staying behind and teaching extra. So you have these teachers are just doing their best. Their raises aren't going up. Their pay isn't going up. But then you have all these administrators that are barely doing the minimum and are getting these huge salaries and bonuses and raises in their salary, while you have teachers who their money was the one who helped elect these individuals.
Absolutely.
And this economy where 2 bags of groceries cost $200, teachers, your paycheck is being cut. You are contributing your fees to unions who are electing and spending hundreds and thousands of dollars of your money to elect individuals, put them into power to just play politics. Right. They're career politicians. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They don't care about our kids. Right. They're just career politicians.
And I want to say this to the audience. We do not need unions to run our school districts. We need people and parents. That's it. We don't need unions. Unions are a fraud. When a superintendent makes more than the president of the United States, we have a problem. we definitely have a problem. And that's what it really is. It's all about money for them.
Yes.
They don't really care about our kids. They don't care about you. I'm not sure how you feel about the PTA, but I think that's a worthless organization at this point. They're not very supportive, at least in LA Unified, they're not, which is a problem, right?
Right.
Parent-teacher association is supposed to be teamwork. We work together, and it doesn't work out that way.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you for being here today, Anita. I appreciate you. I've been waiting for you,
Thank you
to have you on the first show, because I think people need to know what's truly happening out there from a parent.
Right.
Not because you ran for office, because of a parent. I saw you speaking at Glendale Unified quite a few times, even before I decided to run for office. So I'm super happy that we have people like you out there.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to Jordan getting back on the horse. We need Jordan Henry back on the horse, so that we need to build a team, a coalition of parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles to help our kids, right? We need to help our kids. Those are our kids. They're not the government kids. None of us have said, Governor Newsom, we want to co-parent with you. No, this is about us and our families. So again, thank you. I want to thank the audience for joining us for our first show. Looking forward to more shows. You can check me out on my website, www.tony4california.us. Thank you and goodbye, everybody.